A big thank you to the many people who took part in the Nintendo Forecast Wisdom of Crowds survey. As a bit of a test of an idea, it had plenty of lessons to offer, and of course if, as likely, there is not now a general direct imminent, it kind of skewers the premise on which all but the first forecast was made. Now, it's not impossible that we get a general direct still in September. I know Nintendo YouTube is going crazy that this is capital T, capital S, the sign that a Switch successor info drop is imminent, and that's very certainly a plausible explanation. But I mean, Nintendo does its own things for its own reasons. For all we know, they were contractually obligated to show some third-party games by the end of August, but didn't feel ready to do a direct at this point. We could still see a general or a mini in September, but clearly it's a lower chance, 30% tops I'd say, at this moment in time. We still have a big gap in games though between Mario & Luigi Brothership and Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, plus nothing dated past January. That's not an insurmountable problem for Nintendo even without a direct, as they have lots of room with social media drops to get their games out, especially if they're smaller titles. And the Pokemon Company has been quiet of late, and I still would not rule out them having a title which they would presumably want to release in their own Pokemon Presents presentation. I definitely wouldn't recommend ruling out further reveals this year, but I am reminded a little of 2020 when Nintendo had a succession of smaller drops across the second half of the year with the monthly partner showcases, the Mario 35th anniversary video, and the reveal of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I'm just saying, it's Nintendo. Yes, they could turn around and reveal the Switch. They could also go radio silent except for a 2-minute social media drop for Sushi Strikers 2. All that said, a massive well done to the 22 people who forecast 10% as there being a general direct in the August-September period, which at the moment seems to be the closest to being an accurate forecast, and that includes Patreon supporter Bagmonster. Take a bow, Bagmonster. While I was planning, if there was a general direct, to do a more exhaustive review of the Patreon forecasts, that's currently tricky, but we'll see. I'll let the results scroll through on screen though, and let's just talk about some of the things that people forecast. To take a central estimate from the data, I've simplified the average into 10%, 30%, 50%, 70% and 90% bands, just like my other forecast videos. And so we see, for example, that 70% of people were on board with the idea of a general direct. People were very optimistic in the 70% range to see a new remake or remaster and a new Metroid Prime 4 showing, plus to see an NSO Shadow drop, at least one retail title, and a One More Thing reveal, which did kind of happen in the partner showcase with the Yakuza drop anyway. Only just over 50% thought the showcase would be longer than 30 minutes, suggesting a lot of confidence in it being a mini. The lowest supported statement was a mother mention, which I find grimly funny, although as you know it is the anniversary year, and perverse as Nintendo is, it doesn't seem completely impossible that they would do something completely bonkers with it. Nintendo World Championships DLC with Earthbound Beginnings, anyone? Oh, the internet would explode. Some additional forecasts of note. 30% of a new 99 game, which I think is a very interesting shout. 60% chance for Crossy Road Castle in the Direct, which I don't even know what that is. Optimism that Bandai Namco are working with Nintendo on a sequel to ARMS, which would be awesome. Some astute commentators suggested that there would be a lot of anime and JRPG games, and more indie games, which certainly seems to be on point. One person thought a full 2025 year forecast would be on the cards, which I think is pretty ambitious, but that was near enough what the January 2017 presentation was, so if we do get a Switch sequel reveal, then who knows. And one person got it spot on, that the date Nintendo would drop their information would be the 27th of August. Dranzio reckoned 10% likelihood that there is DLC for Echoes of Wisdom, and I kind of agree with that. I think it's a very low shout. My Pleasure forecast a One More Thing that was a preview for an October presentation for the new console, which could be a pretty hype way to go. Also, Goldmember thought it was possible not to have a direct, but to have an October reveal. One person tipped Capcom series spin-offs and re-releases coming to Switch, which was a very good shout. I personally was absolutely hyped to see Power Stone coming to Switch, as I enjoyed that game an awful lot during the Dreamcast days. We also had someone tipping a dual screen Switch successor, someone giving a 30% chance to Pikmin DLC, and a 90% shout for the Switch snap to be heard at least 5 times. Well, Boom94 had a really interesting point that if they announce another Mario sports title, like Mario Baseball, it will most likely do the free DLC model, like how they've done with Mario Tennis, Mario Golf and Mario Strikers. This actually, though, makes me reconsider my confidence in a Mario Baseball release at all, because Nintendo has been so reticent on the DLC in recent years, and yet I agree that the model is where they would go, having had ongoing free updates for tennis, golf, and for the Strikers game. Therefore, I'm now pivoting back to thinking we could get a single Mario Sports mega title on the next system, incorporating tennis, golf, baseball, football, and using the Strikers mechanics and perhaps something else. I think this is how the 3DS approached things, but I'd have to look back and see. Instinctively, it feels unlikely that another Mario Tennis game would sell as well as Aces, but then again, it could well be 10 years on from Aces by the time it releases, in which case I think it would do pretty well. And of course, I am hugely biased, as I would really like to see Camelot doing something else, such as a Shining Force or Golden Sun title. Regular commenter Stephen Fox said that if there is a reference to the Switch successor, there's a 70% chance it will be in the form of a single trailer without any real details, similar to the 2016 Switch reveal trailer that showed footage from technically unannounced games. And this feels accurate to me as well. I think the OLED reveal was also this way, although I believe the Switch Lite was announced as part of a Direct. I think there's a few reasons I'd hesitate on this. One is that we still lack a deep bench of games that could be showcased on the new hardware at reveal, so they could potentially scoop themselves a bit if they're showing off trailers of too many unannounced games. Secondly, the Switch managed to communicate itself and its particular charm instantaneously. They need the next console to be able to do the same if they're going to go down that route. Hopefully it will, and I'm sure that will be their aim, but we'll just have to see. Thirdly, there's just a lot more riding on it this time out. Last time, Nintendo were basically down and out, so although the Switch trailer made big waves as it turned out, if that hadn't worked, they were starting from a low base, so they were always going to take a fair bit of time to get the first impressions of their new console going. This time out, they've got a massive inbuilt audience, and you don't get a second chance to make a good first impression. I agree with Stephen's 70% take, but I thought it worth highlighting the case for the other 30% as well. Ollie had a longer term forecast. This is quite long term, not really related to the Direct much, but I reckon there's a 50% chance the Switch 2 launch day title is a new Mario Kart, a 30% chance it's a new 3D Mario, 10% for Metroid Prime 4, and an additional 10% for it being something else entirely. Now, I will come to my forecasts for the launch window titles, but I broadly agree with this, although I do think there is a higher chance that there will be an additional title. If we think back to the Switch reveal, there was 1-2-Switch and Snipperclips alongside Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I would expect to see at least some kind of demo game, probably from EPD4, explaining the particular joys of the system. But otherwise, and while I will look into it a little bit more, it does feel instinctively right to me that Mario Kart is just their major seller at this point, and the obvious launch title, although it kind of depends when. If they were launching in September of 2025, which would be the 40th anniversary of Super Mario Bros., in that case I could absolutely see a big 3D Mario game taking the crown. The most out there predictions included Bowser and Luigi getting intimate, Star Tropics 3, and a 30% chance of Hollow Knight Silksong. Not saying all of these have equal chances, but let's move swiftly on. Someone also wanted to correct me on referring to Nintendo's portion of Universal Theme Park as a Nintendo theme park, given it's a small section of Universal's theme park. You can see the whole thing from a single vista, and another company owns and operates it. This is a decent point, but I'm not quite sure what I'd refer to it as, on the postcard or in the comments below. There were a couple of specific forecast requests which I've added to my big list of requests alongside my big list of ideas for forecasts. I hope eventually to get to everything, but it is a big list, so we'll see how we go. And a shout out to the person who said that they were 100% forecasting that Nintendo Forecast will take over the world. Thank you very much, and let's hope so. Thank you so much to everyone who contributed. I will look at doing this kind of thing again at some point, but maybe with slight tweaks. One of the long-term aims of this channel from when I set it up with the name Nintendo Forecast 18 months ago was to get to the point where we could have a community of forecasters, and I still think that's an interesting goal, although I might need to think about how to do it. In particular, I wonder if doing this around Nintendo's direct drops is problematic because they're quite mercurial in their approach to when and how they drop information, whereas the game schedules themselves make for slightly stronger forecasting opportunities, as we could normally expect there to be a particular number of games within each quarter, perhaps. I won't have a video on the indie or third-party showcases. These days and for a long time I'm almost exclusively a first-party Nintendo player, mainly because I don't have the time for anything else, but also significantly because I very rarely find other stuff as compelling. Indeed, while there have been some amazing indies I've loved playing on Switch, like Stardew Valley, Celeste, A Short Hike and Undertale, I don't think I've had a significant number of hours, 30 or more, in any third-party game save Sonic Mania and Picross. I'm intrigued though at the arrival on Switch of a Yakuza title. I know it has some common DNA with a favourite of mine, Shenmue, but I've never actually played it. I kind of hoped Shenmue might also come to Nintendo systems as well eventually, but we'll see. I was crossing my fingers for that Camelot Shining Force title, but no luck. Now I did have a post lined up for today, but that will now be tomorrow. I have a couple of videos analysing aspects of 2 recent news stories that I don't think anyone else has addressed. Separately on Patreon I've dropped an air quotes evergreen video as a thanks to those who signed up for the forecasting data, which now won't probably have much to show for it unless we do get that direct pretty soon. I think it's a pretty cool video, but it's one of those videos I make and save for a rainy day so that I have something to post when I'm busy with work or ill or whatnot. There are actually quite a few exclusive videos on the Patreon now, including an exclusive audio which deep dives the fates of the Capcom Zelda team. Okay, this was a quite chatty, insidery video, but I will see you tomorrow with something more substantial. Thank you all, and I will see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.